At this time, if your audio is on mute, please unmute your audio for roll call. Kiss, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Kimball. Trustee Abrego.
Here.
Trustee Adamson.
Here.
Trustee Carney.
Here.
Trustee Day.
Present.
Trustee Eisen.
Here.
Trustee Fagan.
Here.
Trustee Farrar.
Here.
Trustee Furstenberg.
Here.
Trustee Fong.
Here.
Trustee Kames.
Present.
Chair Kimball.
Here.
Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis. Trustee McCrory.
Here.
Trustee Morales.
Here.
Governor Newsom, Speaker Rendon, Trustee Sebelius.
Here.
Trustee Simon.
Here.
Trustee Steinhauser.
Here.
Trustee Taylor.
Here.
Superintendent Thurmond and Chancellor White.
Here.
Thank you, Chair Kimball. We have a quorum.
Great. I want to begin by acknowledging Chancellor White's wise, courageous, and evidence-based leadership. Wait a minute. Sorry, I'm starting my first chair's report, so let's see. Let me start over. I wanted to thank and acknowledge Chancellor White's wise, courageous, and evidence-based leadership. Throughout his tenure and throughout this historic health crisis, I know it wasn't easy to be the first head of a major university to make the difficult and controversial decision to keep most classes online for the fall term. But that's what a great leader does. They look at the facts and they make those tough choices. And the prudence of that particular choice is becoming increasingly apparent as the weeks pass. I also want to thank my colleagues, particularly Adam Day, for their trust and support. It was an enormous honor to be named to the Board of Trustees by Governor Brown 6 years ago. Since then, my respect, pride, and commitment to the CSU has grown daily. We all know the statistics. The CSU is the largest, most diverse four-year public university in the nation, with almost 500,000 students, nearly 4 million alumni, and more than 50,000 world-class faculty and staff, along with the most ethnic and gender diverse group of presidents. We're a socioeconomic escalator that lifts more students and their families out of poverty and into the middle class and beyond than any other institution in the nation. I didn't attend the CSU. I'm a graduate of that other California public university. My father dropped out of high school, and my mom left school in Mexico at 14 to work in a factory. I'm a living example of the transformative power of an accessible, affordable, quality higher education. Without that opportunity, I would not be here today. As I was thinking about what to include in my first chair's report, events were evolving so quickly that it was hard to pinpoint just a few relevant topics. Then I came across a quote by Lenin, Vladimir, not John Lennon, that seemed particularly apt. He said, "There are decades when nothing happens and weeks when decades happen." And as we endure this odd distortion of time and grapple with big decisions, when will we have a vaccine? How long must we self-isolate? How will teaching and learning be affected? How will our economy be impacted? But whatever the future trajectory of this pandemic, of this I am certain. The ultimate vaccine is education. A college degree is the single most critical tool for economic recovery. Individual, the state, and our nation. 99% of post-Great Recession jobs went to workers with some post-secondary education. And 70% of those jobs went to those with at least a bachelor's degree. While concerns over the cracks in American society due to income and opportunity gaps were evident for years, today the pandemic has revealed a San Andreas fault of inequality. As chair, I will focus on ensuring the economic health of the CSU. In my 6 years on this board, I have found that most issues come down to funding. A global crisis like the one we're going through that upends all preconceived notions, tills the social soil in preparation for the planting of fertile new ideas, and for old ideas previously unable to take root. The long-term health and sustainability of our system can only be assured if the CSU establishes a reliable, autonomous stream of funding that is not wholly tied to the ups and downs of our volatile state budget. Paradoxically, the budget is particularly vulnerable to downturns because of its highly progressive nature. Its main source of revenue are income and capital gains taxes. The top 1% pay 50% of those taxes. When a downturn hits, revenue plummets. In 2009, when California's economic activity fell by 3%, the budget plummeted 23%. This effect will only increase during the COVID-induced deep recession. Potential solutions have been circulating for years, from a tax on services to a Prop 98 for higher education, more recently, a data dividend, or royalty on the gross advertising revenue of the big tech companies based in California. This could create an endowment that will put the CSU system on a resilient financial footing by supplementing general state budget allocations, while cushioning the CSU from the volatility of the tax system. The biggest social fracture in American society in terms of life chances is the divide between those with a college education and those without. The deaths of despair among white middle-aged men without a college degree, chronicled by economists Ann Case and Angus Deaton, prove this to be as true for white Americans as Black or brown. There is already a model to follow. The Permanent University Fund in Texas is an endowment drawn from the state sale or lease of mineral rights and lands for oil production. In the 21st century, data is the new oil. Each and every one of our personal data is mined by big tech in order to target online advertising, making them among the richest companies in the world. It is an entirely consistent social policy to seek revenue from the knowledge industry to fund the higher education institution that trains the minds of the future and is the principal ladder of upward mobility for the state's population. While the CSU does have a small endowment, a data survey by Nexus Research in 2015 put the inequality of higher education endowments in stark contrast. It showed that Stanford received about $63,000 per student, while Cal State Fullerton got about $4,000 per year. For Princeton, which only has 8,200 students, the endowment generates $158,000 per student in annual revenue. Achieving true financial sustainability will require that the entire CSU community, students, their families, faculty, employees, and alumni join together to advocate. Twice in a decade, the CSU has been hit by severe financial blows, the Great Recession, and now a catastrophic pandemic. The time to act is when the need is greatest, and that time is now. Thank you. That concludes my report. Chancellor White.
Well, thank you, Chair Kimbell, for those
stirring and thought-provoking and forward-thinking remarks. And as I begin with my own report, I'd like to welcome you to your new role as board chair. With your wealth of experience, your breadth of committee work, and most important, your understanding of and commitment to the university and its mission, I'm certain that the board and the CSU writ large will benefit greatly from your leadership, and I very much look forward to working with you. I also know that this is Vlad Marinusko's first board meeting. Our interim chief audit officer, Vlad, is a proud graduate of Cal State Long Beach and brings a wealth of experience from senior roles at Mattel and in the city of Long Beach. His is a critically important role for the university's operations, and I know Vlad will be a strategic and trusted partner to the members of this board and to the CSU's campuses, and we are delighted to have him join us. In addition, I wish to take a moment to congratulate Jeff Armstrong and Cal Poly San Luis Obispo on successfully closing their comprehensive capital campaign, The Power of Doing. It closed on June 30th. The campaign goal was $700 million. Cal Poly not only met that goal, they exceeded it with the total amount raised by the end of the campaign at more than $832 million, making this the most successful campaign to date in the CSU system. On behalf of the entire Cal State University family, thanks to the more than 73,000 donors who contributed over 184,000 unique gifts to make the Power of Doing campaign such a success. Congratulations, Jeff. My remaining time, and in the interest of brevity, I will discuss quickly 3 topics, each of which I could easily devote hours to. The first, campus planning for the fall term. As you heard from the chair, and you'll recall that it was at our last meeting when I announced that CSU would plan for a primarily virtual fall, with limited exceptions for in-person activities that cannot be conducted virtually that can be performed within rigorous standards of health and safety. In the intervening 60 days, all 23 campuses have stepped up to develop, in consultation with campus stakeholders, detailed plans for the fall, consistent with guidance from the Chancellor's office. This was a truly remarkable, indeed Herculean effort, and I'm extremely proud of how our campus communities came together to make it happen. A few high-level statistics. The number of in-person, on-campus courses for fall 2020 will average less than 7% of those offered in fall of 2019. The approved face-to-face courses are primarily laboratory experiences and art, music, and theater courses that require specialized spaces or equipment. At our 3 campuses that offer specialized programs, such as those that require professional licensure or accreditation, such as the Maritime Academy, or that provide substantial environmental, forestry, agriculture, healthcare, architecture, engineering, and other physical and life science-based lab instruction and experiential learning programs, the number of in-person courses is higher. System-wide, approximately 14% of forecast enrollment is expected to attend some form of in-person instruction or an off-campus clinical experiences during the fall 2020 term. My second topic is last week I announced my decision to delay the phased repopulation of the Chancellor's office until January 4th, 2021 at the earliest. With the alarming surge in new COVID-19 cases, infection rates, hospitalizations and deaths in Los Angeles County and other counties in which our CO employees reside, coupled with the forecast for this disease's progression in the fall, my decision, while disappointing, was abundantly clear. It will provide our employees and their families with the time and clarity to appropriately plan and make necessary arrangements for child and elder care, as well as other necessities, while safeguarding their health and well-being. This last Monday, I sent a letter to the Cal State community emphasizing the seriousness of the CSU's budget situation and outlining, in broad strokes, our plan for navigating these extraordinarily challenging times. This is my third topic for today. The fact is, we face a grim new fiscal reality. Though the legislature and governor clearly understand the CSU's value to the state, and they did their very best for us in the budget, our base budget, as you've learned, has been permanently reduced by $299 million. Yes, there is a possibility that we could have all or part of that cut restored if the federal government provides the state with additional COVID-19 relief funding before October 15th. But that is pure speculation at this point. And even if the funding does materialize, it will be a one-time allocation and must be viewed as a tool that allows us to carefully and deliberately manage the transition to a permanent budget reduction in what is forecast to be a 3-year fiscal challenge at the minimum. Now, thankfully, after having earned a strong state appropriation for the fiscal year 2019-20 that just ended, and having prudently built up reserves and having received Federal CARES Fund Act funding this spring, we began the current fiscal year, 2020-21, reasonably prepared. And we have already undertaken significant measures to reduce costs, including a travel ban and halting all hiring except for essential personnel. Therefore, based on our current understanding of the budget, and after deep consultation with campus and system leaders and other stakeholders, our path forward will be to proceed cautiously without seeking to negotiate a furlough program with our union leaders during this fiscal year. Now, regrettably, there have been and will continue to be some layoffs of our valued CSU employees. But we believe we can mitigate their number in part by implementing a reserves management program similar to that used by the state and recognizing that this is at least a 3-year fiscal challenge. We will be in close discussion with our union leaders through the fall and winter, understanding that we will likely have to revisit the matter of furloughs in the ensuing fiscal years. Now, in closing, I wish to emphasize that while these 3 topics may be disparate on their face, in reality, they represent a common theme that has and will continue to help this great institution navigate the uncertainties and challenges of this historic moment in time. Strategic, inclusive, and collaborative planning with a collective willingness to be nimble and adaptive, and with an unwavering commitment to our twin North Stars, the health and well-being of our students, faculty, staff, and the communities we serve, and maintaining our students' progress to a transformative, high-quality degree. I will forever be proud of how the California State University has risen to this moment. Chair Campbell, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chancellor White. I would now like to welcome the new president of the Academic Senate, CSU, Dr. Robert Keith Collins, to provide his report.
Thank you, Chair Campbell, and good morning, distinguished trustees and colleagues. My name is Dr. Robert Keith Collins, and I'm Professor of American Indian Studies in the College of Ethnic Studies at San Francisco State University. Go Gators! And as of June 1st, 2020, I have the honor of being the 2020-2021 chair of the ASCSU. We know that our collaborative journey through this experiment called shared governance has not been a straight line, but in navigating its bumps and curves, twists and turns, we are at our best when we engage in common unity. Common unity. We often unite these 2 words as community with 23 different usages to convey understandings of what we feel unites us as educators focused on reducing barriers to student success, educators in charge of the stewardship of our work environment, educational administrators charged with managing support systems and activities that enable the function of the CSU, staff that make the day-to-day operations possible, and students whose pursuit of knowledge and use of the resources we provide equip them to speak truth as a way of life. I want to separate these 2 words, common and unity, for the purposes of illuminating the meaning-making factors of collaboration in shared governance that illuminate how and why the ASCSU continues to stand ready to collaborate in the advancement of the principles of curriculum in this age of COVID-19. Illustrating our dedication to common purpose in these areas, during our May 2020 plenary under the leadership of immediate past Chair Nelson, the ASCSU passed AS 3424, resolution commending the students, faculty, staff, and administrators of the California State University system during this age of COVID-19 global pandemic. This resolution commends students, faculty, and staff and administrators of the CSU during this historic challenge, especially the custodial staff and essential staff working to make our workplaces safe. The ASCSU also passed AS 3421, reaffirming the role of the Academic Senate of the CSU and campus senates in establishing curriculum and graduation requirements. This resolution reaffirms the place of the ASCSU as stewards of the principles of curriculum under HERA. Acting on behalf of the ASCSU over the summer, the ASCSU Executive Committee has met twice and passed 2 resolutions to address pending legislation centered on access, budget, and equity concerns in higher education. This is uncommon, but we felt circumstances called for action. First, AS 3436-20 in support of Assembly Constitutional Amendment 5. This resolution reaffirms our 1996 resolution AS 2330-96, support for educational equity programs in the CSU, opposition to the California Civil Rights Initiative, which expressed ASCSU opposition to Proposition 209, and expresses support for ACA 5 and its repeal of Proposition 209. In this, we join Chancellor White and the CSU in advocacy. Also approved was AS 3437-20, response to SB 121, Budget Act of 2020. This resolution in our tradition responds to SC 121's amended budget recommendations and expresses concerns that it would negatively impact the nearly 500,000 students currently enrolled in the CSU. We look forward to collaborating on budget advocacy with the Chancellor's Office, the Board of Trustees, the CFA, to ensure adequate funding for the CSU in the coming years. In closing, the ASCSU will return in September, and in the meantime, on behalf of the ASCSU, the Executive Committee will continue to meet, actually tomorrow, and August 6, 2020. Central in these meetings will be the planning of the joint ASCSU Chancellor's Office Leadership Retreat on August 26, 2020. Our theme this year will be Common Unity. The goal of this retreat is to strategize on collaborations necessary to enable student achievement and well-being in the CSU in the face of COVID, with particular attention to Graduation Initiative 2025 pillar on student engagement and well-being. The rationale for this theme is a direct precipitate of my looking back on a speech delivered by Martin Luther King Jr. on April 4th, 1967, during his meeting of clergy and laity concerned at Riverside Church in New York City, as he attempted to remind listeners of the relationship between peace and civil rights. In it, he reminds us that, quote, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. There is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action," end quote. It's my sincere hope that we can all collaborate towards positive actions during the 2020-2021 academic year. Thank you, Chair Kimbell. This concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Dr. Collins. Moving on to our next report, I would like also to welcome our new CSSA President, Zara Karabit, to provide her report.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair Kimbell, Chancellor White, trustees, campus presidents, and guests. My name is Zara Karabit, and I currently serve as the 2020-2021 Cal State Student Association President. It is unfortunate that we cannot meet in person, but I'm excited to be back here again in my new role. If I seem a little familiar to you, you might remember me from last year as CSSA Chair. But prior to that, I have also served as the Social Justice and Equity Officer and as a board member when I was CSUN's Associated Students Vice President. I'm proud to say that I'm an international student from Kuwait and a product of the CSU. As a double matador, I completed my undergraduate degree in civil engineering, and I'm now pursuing my master's in structural engineering at Cal State Northridge. I wanted to take a moment to introduce you all to an incredibly inspiring CSSA executive team. Diana Vicente is serving as chair, and she's pursuing her MBA at Cal State Northridge. Alondra Esquivel Garcia is our Vice President of System-Wide Affairs, a fourth-year double major in political science and race and resistance studies at San Francisco State. And lastly, Catherine Pham, Vice President of Finance, a fourth-year nutrition and dietetics major at Cal State Long Beach. We currently do have a vacancy for the Vice President of Legislative Affairs position and hope to have it filled next month. I also wanted to take another moment and truly thank Trustee Juan Garcia for his phenomenal leadership and service, and wish him the best of luck in law school. CSSA appreciates the opportunity to be here with you all and to be able to provide an update on our work. I wanted to share with everyone my primary goal for this year. I want to use my position to ensure that the student voice is strong and to provide a platform of advocacy so that the students from the different communities can lead in the changes they want to see. It is absolutely critical that students have a seat at the table, particularly those from vulnerable populations that are often overlooked. In this virtual environment comes a set of challenges that all students will be facing. Not having in-person components, whether it may be lectures, advisement, or on-campus activities, is disheartening. These are key factors in our ability to build relationships and strengthen our sense of belonging. We must focus on ensuring that the virtual experience is meaningful and enriching. Although the pandemic has drastically changed our lives, it has allowed us to become more inclusive and accessible with our ability to virtually participate. Today, I wanted to bring forth two crucial issues. I wanted to start by addressing the ongoing discussion on ethnic studies. We support our diverse student body and have a commitment to ensuring students are informed and well-rounded by the time they graduate, which is why ethnic studies is so essential. Ethnic studies enhances students' personal and educational experience beyond our campus communities. It is a vital academic program that values the intersectional lived experiences of people of color and develop the skill to critically analyze communities outside their own. Though we do not have an official position on the CSU's proposal, last year's Board of Directors took a position of support on AB 1460 by Assembly Member Weber. We look forward to our continued work on this issue with the Chancellor's Office staff and all of our 23 campuses. On July 6, 2020, the fate of thousands of international students across the CSU and nation became catastrophically uncertain. Immigrations and Customs Enforcements released a memo stating that international students must return to their countries if they're unable to take an in-person course. The announcement came a month before the CSU and other universities were set to begin for the fall semester, mostly in a virtual environment to limit the spread of COVID-19, leaving thousands of students without any true guidance on how to proceed. This decision was not only arbitrary, but harmful to the mental and physical well-being of international students, staff, and faculty of the CSU. International students were left with two grim choices: voluntary leave or deportation. As an international student myself, this decision has left me in a state of crippling stress and anxiety. Like many others, I came to the US to create a better future for myself. And the amount of uncertainty I experienced in the past few weeks forced me to consider otherwise. I've spent the last 5 years of my life pursuing both my bachelor's and master's in engineering. And the thought of having to pack my bag and leave in a moment's notice and not by my own choice is earth-shattering. This announcement was not considered of the fact that we're still in the midst of a global pandemic. The implications of these modifications would have left international students to face many obstacles, such as difficulty planning a return flight on such an extremely short notice, dealing with closed borders and heavy travel restrictions, the high risk and danger of contracting COVID-19, and financial burdens such as commitments to leases and rent and other bills, strict technological access, and attending classes at odd hours. Thankfully, that decision was later rescinded, giving me and other international students nationwide a much needed sigh of relief. However, we must recognize that international students are still at risk, so we must continue our advocacy in ensuring their health and safety is always a priority, and that must be extended to all other vulnerable students in the CSU. We are fortunate that the leaders in higher education quickly took action to protect international students, including our own system. I wanted to thank the Chancellor's Office and Chancellor White for their immediate communication in reassuring that the CSU was actively doing everything possible they could to protect international students. I also want to thank the CSU and the California Community Colleges for working alongside California Attorney General Becerra. I want to acknowledge that this was only possible because we all collectively worked together under one united cause. This brings much needed hope in a time of crisis. It brings hope that we can overcome any obstacle together. And I strongly believe that if we continue with that standard of advocacy, we can ensure CSU students receive the best possible education. Thank you, Chair Kimbell. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Zara. Our final report will be from Michelle Power, President of the CSU Alumni Council.
There we go. Thank you, Chair Kimbell. I remain in awe of the California State University faculty and staff who continue to work to ensure the health and safety of our 23 campuses and communities. I'd like to thank Chancellor White and the Board of Trustees for your continued leadership in planning as we navigate and try to make sense of these unprecedented times. It is no surprise that our over 3.8 million alumni continue to make us proud and find ways to support the communities they serve. Here are a few examples of the CSU alumni making a difference during the pandemic. Mary Barlow, alumna from CSU Bakersfield and superintendent of schools for Kern County, worked hard to make sure the 190,000 students within 47 districts had what they needed for virtual education. A third of her students live under the poverty line, and her office purchased thousands of Chromebooks and internet hotspots to ensure they continue to receive a quality education. These are our future CSU students and alumni. The CSU produces about 40% of nurses in California, with programs at 21 of our campuses. Sacramento State alumna Bonnie Castillo serves as the Executive Director of National Nurses United and has been advocating for healthcare workers throughout the country. In April, nurse practitioner and Stanislaus State alumna Arnold Velasquez traveled to New York for 8 weeks, where he helped combat their surge of COVID-19 cases. We have 2 San Jose State alumni to thank for the first rapid results COVID-19 test. Dr. David Persing and Rich Nolasco were part of the team at the Molecular Diagnostic Testing Center, Cepheid. The company received emergency authorization from the FDA for this test that can be administered on site and deliver results within 45 minutes. We are honored to have these leaders included in our 3.8 million CSU alumni. More stories like these can be found in the Heroes for Our Times story on the calstate.edu website. The CSU Alumni Council is preparing for our August meeting, where we are focusing on ways to support the student experience for both continuing and incoming students. Leaders from Student Affairs, Career Services, and the student body will share the challenges they are facing, and we will discuss the best ways that we can assist and support their endeavors. I will share our findings at the September meeting. Thank you, Chair Kimbell. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Michelle. It is now time for the board to consider the items listed on today's consent agenda. Please note, as announced in committee, that item 2, violation of trustees' code of conduct and resolution of censure from the committee of the whole, was removed from the committee agenda and is no longer on the full board consent agenda for approval at this time. All the remaining committee items requiring full board approval are listed on the consent agenda. Trustees, again, at this time, please ensure that you unmute your audio. Is everybody unmuted?
You
All
have
right.
some raised hands, Lily.
I see that. And does any trustee wish to remove any item from the consent agenda? I see Trustee Morales.
Yes, I want to remove the item about the new requirement, please. I think that-
Item 3
Yes.
from Ed Policy. Okay. Trustee Abrego?
I agree with pulling that item 3 from the educational policy. And I would like to make a motion that we suspend this topic from further consideration and move it until the next board meeting.
Second.
That motion would be appropriate after we vote on the remaining items on the consent agenda, Trustee Abrego.
Okay.
Okay, so any other items a trustee would wish to remove from consent? All right, I see none. So may I have a motion to approve the remaining items listed on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Kiss, please take roll call. Again, trustees, make sure you're unmuted.
Is a motion to approve the minutes?
Yes, so this is a motion to approve the items listed on the consent agenda, including the minutes, except for item 3 from the Committee on Educational Policy, which Trustee Morales has requested to be removed for separate discussion.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Trustee Abrego,
Yes.
Trustee Adamson,
Yes.
Trustee Carney,
Yes.
Trustee Day,
Yes.
Trustee Eisen,
Yes.
Trustee Fagan,
Yes.
Trustee Farrar,
Yes.
Trustee Furstenberg,
Yes.
Trustee Fong,
Yes.
Trustee Kames,
Yes.
Chair Kimbell,
Yes,
Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis, Trustee McRory,
Yes.
Trustee Morales,
Yes.
Governor Newsom, Speaker Rendon, Trustee Sebelius,
Yes.
Trustee Simon,
Yes.
Trustee Steinhauser,
Yes.
Trustee Taylor,
Aye.
Superintendent Thurman, and Chancellor White.
Yes.
Okay, the remaining items on the consent agenda have been approved.
all right. The items listed on the consent agenda, except for item 3 from the Committee on Educational Policy, the recommended amendments to Title V regarding ethnic studies just are approved. All right. Yes,
Madam Chair, I would like to make an amendment, a motion, I'd like to make a motion that the item 3, the recommended amendments to Title V regarding ethnic studies and social justice be suspended and moved over to the next board meeting.
Second.
Second.
okay. Point of order, Andy, will we vote on the motion first or?
We need discussion.
So normally the motion would be made and then the motion to postpone would be made, but it doesn't matter because either way you would take a vote on the motion to postpone first. And then depending on the result, you would vote on the underlying motion. So now you would have discussion on the motion that's been made and seconded to postpone.
All right, so we'll start discussion.
But let me speak on behalf of the motion, and because I have concerns regarding this proposal, the way it is developed. Yesterday, we discussed concerns about the legislative intrusion into the CSU governing practices. And earlier today, Dr. Collins talked about the value of shared governance and common unity as one of the goals this year for the academic senate. One of the practices that we cherish is faculty consultation, consulting with our faculty. Yet for the faculty from the ethnic studies community, they were not consultant in the development of the ethnic studies proposal as so named. Let me read a letter from the Dr. Kenneth Montero, chair of the CSU Council on Ethnic Studies. He writes, I am the chair of the steering committee of the California State University Council on Ethnic Studies, the just former dean of the College of Ethnic Studies, and one of the hundreds of ethnic studies content experts who were not consulted for the ethnic studies proposal brought before you by the Chancellor's office. Additionally, a person that is listed in the material that was presented yesterday by the Chancellor's office lists an individual who spoke, who said that yes, he participated in the minutes, but he made it clear that he was not a representative from the Ethnic Studies Council. He also made it clear that he did not support the CSU proposal. The title of the proposal is called Ethnic Studies and Social Justice. And I find it difficult to advance this proposal without the support and the consultation of our content experts, ethnic studies faculty. I don't have any hesitation supporting the proposal if we were to delete the name ethnic studies. Let's be clear. This is not a requirement for ethnic studies. Yesterday, we learned that a student could meet the social justice requirement without ever having to take an ethnic studies course. So why do we keep referring to it as an ethnic studies requirement when it isn't true? Social justice can be taught by any academic discipline, including ethnic studies. Let me read further from this letter from Dr. Monteiro, who says, the Council of Ethnic Studies wants to propose a way forward. Why don't we give them an opportunity to make a proposal? Why don't we listen to this cohort of CSU faculty that have an idea for us to move in unity? Let me close by saying that, also quoting from another letter that we received from Dr. Teresa Montano, and she makes it very clear. She says, if this passes, students can take a social justice course without ever having to step foot in an ethnic studies course. Whereas taking an ethnic studies course without a social justice lens is impossible. Think about that. I hope that you support the motion to move this proposal down to the next board meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Abrego. I have Trustee Taylor.
Thank you very much, Chair Kimbell. And with great respect for my colleague, Trustee Abrego, I encourage you to vote no on this motion to postpone. As many members know, I have a long tenure in higher education as a volunteer, a donor, executive, member of the UC Board of Regents, and now a member of the CSU Board of Trustees. One thing I've learned in higher education, there's no such thing as a perfect process. I would encourage you, though, to look at pages 4 and 5 of the item in your board book to see the long list of consultation and meetings that have taken place to drive this proposal to where it is today. With all due respect, members, this proposal has received enormous study, enormous evaluation. More study will not advance the conversation. It's time to vote up or down on the merits as it stands before you. I encourage a no vote.
Thank you, Peter. Latifa?
Sure, I'll be brief. I think that the proposal, I want to be clear, is thorough. It's thoughtful. I've reviewed the course offerings for both social justice and the opportunity for students to be able to take ethnic studies courses. And each campus clearly will have a mandate and will have to get extremely creative in how to implement sort of the immersion of studies. But, you know, from the last comments, what I think is important from yesterday, and I want to go back again, what the Vice Chancellor's office has done, and again, I agree, Peter, has been exhaustive and thoughtful. And within the last day, From 16 universities across the country, I've received emails and calls from leaders from the ethnic studies community in their unsatisfaction, not just from our beautiful CSU, but a national community of ethnic studies leaders. And what came out was of many of these conversations into the night was not necessarily the dissatisfaction of the overall course offerings, both in social justice and in ethnic studies. And they provide excellent opportunities for young people to advance their critical race theory analysis and issues related to justice writ large. What is still concerning to me, and based on the comments right before mine, is the opportunity for students to forego ethnic studies curricula, which in some ways might make more sense for us to think about this course of study as a social justice umbrella with ethnic studies offerings and not ethnic studies. So I'm struggling deeply without the deep support of the ethnic studies community. While I believe, and I just want to be clear as a trustee, it seems like this will move forward. It is not in my conscience at this moment to support, not necessarily the motion right now, but the proposal. And that pains me because I understand deeply the work put into the proposal. I understand the 50+ year quest for ethnic studies. My first talk in front of this body, there were 8 leaders of the ethnic studies movement. And my father's sister was one of them. And we will make a decision today, and the presidents of each of our wonderful universities will have to contend with that decision and work with the ethnic studies leaders on the campus to move forward. And we're going to have to support those presidents. But in terms of my clear understanding that there is a discipline that doesn't just exist here in our university, but leadership from a national movement that is displeased with what's before us. I may be in the minority here, but I want to listen to that voice. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Trustee. We are next going to hear from Trustee Morales.
Yes, I don't know if people know, but I have worked with Latifa on social justice issues now for decades, or at least with Latifa for at least a decade. And so we have worked, Latifa has worked for social justice in her lifetime. And so have I. And I think I applaud the move we're making towards social justice being an integral part of our curriculum. I think it's about time. It should have been done decades ago. So why am I hesitant about supporting this proposal? What was the hesitation, I think, that Latifa expressed? This is about social justice, which we have championed. Let's call it that. When we call it something that it's not, which is an ethnic studies requirement, that is not what it is. It's a social justice requirement, and I would applaud that and support that. That's what I support, a social justice requirement, and that's what I stated yesterday. That's what I support, and I'm for the motion, which is to table it for one more meeting, because I believe that we can better reflect on this, because this is a very monumental. I think yesterday, some folks cited, how rare it is for us as trustees to make any changes in this category of requirements. So I think we've gotten tens of letters and of comments suggesting that we not move on this. I think it's a good opportunity for us to postpone and think about this, but also we need to know what the governor is going to do, which is what Trustee Abrego cited yesterday. I think we should hear from the governor about what he's doing. I think that if somehow we coincide, perhaps if something passes, that we could ask the governor to rescind and the legislature to rescind whatever action and conflict there may be. But I think that it'd be more prudent for us, considering the controversy of this, which has become, which is odd, but here in the age of change, literally in the past 2 months, this would be controversial. I mean, it should be. I mean, I think we all support social justice. And that's what I support, and I would ask you to vote for this motion.
Thank you. Trustee Kames?
Thank you, Chair Campbell. And this is just kind of being very honest and maybe a little bit personal, but this is one of those things that has been keeping me up at night lately. And I guess in a sense it shows just how much I care about all of this. And last night I was thinking and we had a conversation during committee about legislative interference and the precedent of that. And I kept thinking about why or a way for me to address that as someone who's a champion of ethnic studies and having kind of an authentic approach to ethnic studies. And I think somewhere along the way, I realized that it's, at least for me, it's less about, and it's more about the context. It's more about the proposal. It's more about what the proposal ought to do, right? What it's going to accomplish. And so from that, I kind of went back and I looked at some of the points that were made. And I also looked at some of the concerns that I have heard from students and a lot of people. And so with that being said, I just wanted to quickly address some of those things. In terms of this being an ethnic studies proposal or an ethnic studies and social justice, I want to echo what Trustee Morales said, that, and even Trustee Simon said, it's really a social justice umbrella and then ethnic studies falls underneath. And I think what was concerning to me the most was when it was said that you could actually fulfill this requirement without taking an ethnic studies class. And so if we kind of go back to the conversation that we had yesterday, and I kind of shared an example of a class about specifically, economics of poverty and discrimination. And although that class is very important, but then when you compare it to a class of, history from the perspective of Afro-Americans or from the Black perspective, right? Those are the things that are not, or history itself is never really told from that perspective. As we read and as we studied, it's always told from the winner perspective or for the privileged perspective. And so really, and for me and for, I guess, what I'm championing, and again, I truly appreciate the by the CSU for the CSU, but at the end of the day, I still want to advocate for a proposal that is a reflection of what our community is asking for, but also what our country actually needs. And so for those reasons, I support the motion that Trustee Abrego made. I supported it yesterday and I supported it again. And to, the comments that were made earlier about the consultation process and the kind of timeline that was made. And again, this has been in the works for about 5 years. But even so, if you go to the table that outlines the, so AB 1460, the ASCSU proposal, and then the CSU proposal, you will find a difference in terms of what the ASCSU is saying versus this actual proposal. And so I'm just going to pull it up really quickly. So right here, the ASCSU proposal says a broader range of departments than AB 1460, including the experiences of additional historically oppressed groups, Jewish, Muslim, LGBTQ, women, but should otherwise retain the core definition of ethnic studies. So I just wanted to bring that component to everyone's attention, as opposed to what the Chancellor's Office proposal says here, which is any academic departments that can meet the course learning outcomes as defined by campus. And so in terms of consultation and in terms of really looking towards the members of our community to kind of help us or help the Chancellor's Office kind of draft a proposal, and although it's well thought of and it's an exceptional social justice proposal, it does not meet what the ASCSU resolution says, what we've been hearing from constituents from all over our community. And with that being said, those are some of the reasons as to why I have supported the motion that Trustee Abrego says. In no way, shape, or form am I as a member, am I trying to kill this, quote unquote, but I am trying to make it reflect what our community needs right now.
Thank you. Trustee Eisen.
Thank you. A lot of people start their comments by saying, with all due respect to my fellow trustees, and they don't actually mean that. But in our case, we do mean that. We act with incredible respect for each other, and I really appreciate that. And so I agree with Peter, not surprisingly, and for a lot of reasons based on things that I heard today. Dr. Collins, when he gave his first report, quoted from Martin Luther King Jr., and it was a powerful quote about tomorrow is here. Tomorrow is here, the time is now, and there is such a thing as too late. The time is now for this board to act on this. And I believe also that Trustee Garcia, in his closing remarks to us as a trustee, asked us to think about why we're here and what we're doing and what is the rationale for this board and for each of us participating on this board. And I think our rationales are all the same. We all want to serve the students as best we can. And of course, that is all of our students. So what is the best way to serve all of our students? I went back to Senate Bill 1460 to read the language of it that is the rationale for the proposed legislation. And it says, and I'm going to quote it, it is the intent of the legislature that students of the California State University acquire the knowledge and skills that will help them comprehend the diversity and social justice history of the United States and of the society in which they live, to enable them to contribute to that society as responsible and constructive citizens. That is the language from Senate Bill 1460, but it could just as easily be the language for the Title V amendment that we're proposing. This is exactly what we want to achieve. So the question comes down to, what is the best way to achieve that? Is it from a narrow lens of 4 traditional departments, or is it from a slightly broader lens that would include the things that we've talked about? And when we're talking about what is best for all students, To me, it is better to have the broader lens. I also have a lot of confidence that our faculty, who are going to be the ones in charge of outlining the learning outcomes for this broad general education requirement, for them to find the way to be sure that ethnic studies as an anchor, which is the way we have referred to it, and as the core of this requirement, is not lost, watered down, weakened in any way. The faculty will be able to do that. That is their job, to figure out how to create curricula that will meet this broad goal that I just read in the legislature, and which is the same goal that the CSU has. So I don't think there is any reason to postpone this. I know Latifa has been receiving messages from a community. I've also been receiving messages applauding the CSU for being the first to ever go out there and create such a general education requirement for its entire student body. It is momentous that we are doing this. I hope we don't lose that extraordinarily positive thing that we're doing in any kind of details that can be worked out. I believe they can be worked out in the community, as Dr. Collins put it, that the CSU will bring together to define the curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Eisen. Chancellor White?
Thank you, Chair Kimbell. Yesterday we had a very important discussion, and I share Becky's view that it was done respectfully, and my comments now are with great respect to Sai and Hugo and Latifa for your comments, and Mariana and Becky and everybody else who spoke yesterday. There remains, with the trustees providing the leadership that is their responsibility as fiduciaries, there's still work to do that the faculty will continue to shape this general education requirement as we implement it over the months ahead. The issue of consultation, Peter made there's never enough. And that is sort of part of the DNA of a university life. But as he pointed out in the report, you can see all the consultations that happened. You should also be very, very clear, know that every campus was invited to complete a survey and specifically to engage their ethnic study faculty in putting that input in. But at the end of the day, it is time to act. And I made the points yesterday about a series of reasons as to why that is the case. But please, ethnic studies, the disciplines remain the anchor for this proposal and for the course offerings. The proposal champions the study of 4 historical, racial, and ethnic groups and gives students the chance to connect, an opportunity to connect with other marginalized groups, as well as the tools and resources to put their knowledge into action. But ethnic studies is the anchor. And think about students whose identities cover many different identities. They may be a member of the LGBTQ community and also of the African American community. They may be members of a Muslim community and be members of a racial or ethnic underserved community. So it is really important to recognize that we've had this discussion. It's been a work of 6 years. And we should not postpone the board's right for a decision. So I speak against Trustee Abrego's motion to delay. And I speak for the board to support this motion. But one of the things yesterday that came up was a request to have all board members have an opportunity to vote on this. And while it came out of committee yesterday with overwhelming support, I think we want to respect the fact that every trustee has an opportunity to vote this up or down, and then we move forward. So thank you very much, and I look forward to our actions.
All right. Trustee Thurmond and then trustee Abrego.
Thank you, Madam Chair, trustees, Chancellor White. It's an honor to be joining this conversation. I am so grateful that we're talking about ethnic studies at this time. Our country needs healing as it relates to racial justice. And I'm grateful that many of our students have been so vocal about the need for ethnic studies as a way of helping to foster that healing. This has been a journey for me in learning about ethnic studies. To be completely honest, I was born the year that the ethnic studies movement started. And so while I was not there, I have appreciated hearing from elders and experts and new leaders in ethnic studies who've helped me to understand the importance of ethnic studies, but the importance of the 4 disciplines that are within ethnic studies. I have been, let's just say I've been involved with a lot of conversations and debate about what is ethnic studies and what are also really important conversations that have to happen that go beyond ethnic studies, like multicultural discussions and embracing the incredible diversity that exists in California. But it's not lost on me that what was started circa 1968 at San Francisco State was a movement that talked about the importance of recognizing people of color in the Americas whose experiences represent a kind of discrimination and racism and bias and hate that requires its own movement. And so for me, this has nothing to do with a conversation about who should make the decisions. I respect that it is the prerogative of the California Senate, of the State Senate, Faculty Senate to make those kinds of decisions. I would just ask the board, the trustees, to consider taking more time here today to have this conversation about ethnic studies. As I understand it, ethnic studies really is a movement where we should hold the fidelity to 4 groups, in particular, African Americans, Chicano Latino Californians, indigenous people, and Asian Pacific Islanders. And while there are very important conversations to have for others who may fall outside those groups, it has been impressed upon me that that is really the basis of ethnic studies. I want to be clear. I think that we have to have conversations about bias as it exists everywhere. I want to be clear that I think oppression is not limited to the 4 groups that have maintained the basis of ethnic studies. But I feel like it is important to us to honor the movement, those who've been asking for ethnic studies all these years, 52 of them, I know, because that's how I count my life, all these years to say, let's bring forward finally ethnic studies. And let's do it at a time as we celebrate that Black Lives Matter, as we have vocal conversations about the importance of dealing with racial justice and social justice. I'd like to just ask and support the motion to postpone, to take more time for further discussion. I would love to have the opportunity to talk with as many experts as we can assemble on ethnic studies, and those who would even have the suggestion that we brought in ethnic studies. I still would like to have the conversation with those individuals. I know many of them are faculty in the CSU and in many of our institutions here in California. But I would like to support the motion today and urge my fellow trustees to support the motion, to take a little bit more time to continue to have this conversation so that we can do this in a way that gives justice to the movement that we have learned about in ethnic studies. I respectfully ask for your aye vote on the motion to postpone the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Thurmond. So I'm not seeing any other hands raised. And at this point, Secretary Jones, we would then vote on the motion, or?
You would call, Chair Kimball, you would call a vote on Trustee Abrego's motion to postpone to September.
Okay.
So a vote yes on this pending motion would be to be in favor of suspending this matter, postponing it rather, to September. And a no vote means that you want it to be considered on the merits today.
All right, very well. So I will call then this motion to postpone item 3, the ethnic studies item from education policy, and I would just then remind members that as we discussed yesterday, essentially postponing it is killing the item because the vote will be happening in the Senate and will be on the governor's desk within a few weeks. So, Ms. Kiss, would you call the vote?
Point of order.
Yes?
I'd like to just have clarification, Madam Chair, with all due respect. The last statement that you made, I would like to just have clarification as to why a vote for postponing for further discussion is, as you equate, the same as killing it. I do not interpret it that way. I do understand that there are other conversations taking place in other houses of government and decision-making about ethnic studies, but I don't know that I interpret it that way, but I submit that I may not understand everything. Is there someone who can clarify for the trustees how a vote to postpone is the same as a vote to kill the item? Because I don't want the item killed, and I don't equate it that way. So I appreciate the clarification, Madam Chair.
Chancellor White, would you like to
Yes.
discuss that? Thank you.
Trustee Thurman, nice to see you. So AB 1460 is in the legislature, and when they reconvene soon, and I know they've had trouble picking the date precisely, but it is, I believe, in the next week or two, depending on the pandemic. That this yesterday, Assemblymember Weber indicated that this bill AB 1460 would be brought up for a vote, and I think all indications are it'll be successfully passed by the Assembly and sent to the governor. The governor then has 10 days to act on that motion, on that bill. And if we wait until our next board meeting to continue this conversation and vote our measure up, it means that the governor has to make a decision before he has the CSU motion in front of him. Our governor is a governor of California for all. And this motion that we have in front of us is really a CSU for all. It's as I said, it's grounded in ethnic studies, but it is broader and more inclusive, gives students choice. And student choice is really very important. So it's really a de facto outcome that if AB 1460 were to be on the governor's desk and we don't act at this meeting, that to the point of Chair Kimbell, is our motion is essentially done. And that's the point that she was raising, and one that I happen to agree strongly with. Let me just finish. I would like to give our progressive governor, who's demonstrated his progressivity over the years as mayor with the LGBTQ community, and certainly he and I have had many discussions with respect to when our campuses have had difficulty with issues around the Jewish community. He believes in really supporting all of our students and all of our communities, as do I.
Madam Chair, I raise my hand.
Trustee Abrego?
Yes, I'm the revelation that that our vote will kill based on AB 1460 really generates a lot of concern to me, because I don't think that our reaction should be towards AB 1460. We're talking about social justice. We're talking about preparing our students for the next generation of leaders. And here we are worried about whether or not the governor will be signing off on the bill or not. There's no guarantee that he's going to sign off on the bill if we don't submit this proposal. We really need to make this vote on the merits of this proposal, not of what we assume the governor is going to, what action he's going to take. So I want to make that clear, that we're talking about this proposal. This proposal was not developed to counter AB 1460. At least that's not the way I understand it. Thank you.
Trustee Thurman?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on the point of order. Thank you for the clarification, Chancellor White. I would also like to align myself with the comments of Trustee Abrego that while the governor certainly has expressed his support in general and concept for ethnic studies, we don't know whether or not he will, we don't know what he will do should this prevail to get to his desk. And I agree and would identify with the comments of Trustee Abrego that whether or not that he would support it, I do believe that it's in the best interest of the CSU to the trustees to make this vote not on the basis of being in support or opposed to the bill that Trustee Abrego referenced. You know, I appreciate Chancellor White's articulation of why it does feel like this action is urgent, that there is a similar measure moving forward that apparently has some differences. I appreciate the consideration around the timeline that Chancellor White suggested. The only other thing that I can offer is that I know that many times this has happened in the legislature, for example, where there are two different measures on the same topic, but they may have different components to them. And sometimes what has happened is there's been a conversation about how to blend the best of those items. And all I would say is that without considering what's going to happen to that bill, there just might be opportunities for a further consideration and conversation between the CSU proposal and the legislative proposal. While I don't know all the details of the bill, I do know the author, and I do know that the author is an expert on ethnic studies and Africana studies, and I do know that she is someone who is willing to work with others to think through concepts. And so, again, I appreciate you all taking the time on the point of order, because I do not think that this is a vote to postpone, is a vote to end the life of the proposal. I think it's an opportunity for further discussion. I think further discussion on such an important topic can be valuable. I think we can all benefit from that. And once again, I would just urge an aye vote on the motion to postpone for further discussion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Trustee Kames and then Trustee Fong.
I just wanted to quickly point out the comment that I had made earlier, in which I talked about so there's a difference between looking at it from the standpoint of what's best versus the proposal versus the bill. And I just want to make it clear that, again, the vote that, at least where I'm coming from, and even the comments that I have previously made, is from a standpoint of the actual, like the context of the proposal. And again, I think that this for the CSU, by the CSU, is a completely valid statement. But at the same time, my thought process is at what cost? And so if it's for the CSU, by the CSU, then we have to ensure that, again, our proposal is a reflection of what we believe in and also our values.
Okay, Wenda Fong, Trustee Fong.
Thank you. I really appreciate all this deep and heartfelt discussion. I do suggest, though, that we call for the vote.
All right. Ms. Kidd?
I'm still on the speakers list.
Trustee Sebelius. All right. One last speaker, and then I think it's time to call the question.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and that people can let their voices be heard through their vote on this issue. Yes, Trustee Sebelius.
I just want to clarify something. If the board was to pass this Title V change, it would not be the end. It would be the end of the beginning. The consultation, the conversation would not stop. The only thing that the trustees are asked to decide today is the Title V change to create the framework for the establishment of an ethnic studies course. And how this course will eventually take shape will have to be determined in the time between the Title V change and the implementation in the academic year 2023-24. And I strongly urge the Chancellor's Office to engage in extensive and meaningful consultation with the faculty, especially the statewide academic senate, as the elected representative body of the faculty, as well as with disciplinary experts as appropriate.
Thank you, Trustee. So this motion,
Chair Kimball,
yes,
I can provide Trustee Sebelius the commitment to do exactly what he just said.
terrific. All right. So the motion, we're going to be voting on the motion made to suspend item number 3 from the Committee on Educational Policy until the September meeting. Ms. Kiss, will you call the roll? Or may I have a motion?
You have a motion, you have a second, you just need to take the roll call vote, please.
Okay, roll call vote.
Yes. Been moved and seconded. I'll now begin with the roll call vote on Trustee Abrego's motion.
Please unmute.
Trustee Abrego.
It's muted.
Sorry, you're on mute.
Sal, you're muted.
Unmute vote.
How do you vote on the motion, Si?
Yes. How about give you a sign language?
Thank you. I have your verbal confirmation. Yes, Trustee Abrego. Trustee
Yes.
Adamson.
No.
Trustee Carney.
No.
Trustee Day.
No.
Trustee Eisen.
No.
Trustee Fagan.
No.
Trustee Farrar.
No.
Trustee Furstenberg.
No.
Trustee Fong.
No.
Trustee Kames.
Yes.
Chair Kimball.
No.
Trustee McGrory.
No.
Trustee Morales.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis, Governor Newsom, Speaker Rendon, Trustee Sebelius.
I vote against postponement.
Trustee Simon.
Yes.
Trustee Steinhauser.
No.
Trustee Taylor.
No.
Superintendent Thurmond.
Aye.
Chancellor White.
No.
Chair Kimball, the motion does not pass.
All right. So now we are going to move to vote vote on item 3 with the full board.
Need a motion and a second, Chair.
Madam Chair, I move item 3 of the educational agenda.
Second.
You have a second?
I will second.
Very well. Ms. Kiss, can you take the roll?
Thank you, Chair Kimball.
Madam Chair, you have one member that's asking to speak.
Yeah, I would like discussion, please, Madam Chair.
All right.
Okay, I would like to ask for an amendment to the motion to change the naming of this requirement from what it is proposed to simply what it is, which is social justice. That is my motion for amending.
Second.
Anybody want to second my motion, please?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
How would it read? What exactly would it read then?
The same framework would be the same. It would be the same framework as presented. It just simply be, instead of saying it's ethnic studies and social justice, it just simply say social justice, which is the social studies requirement, which was what, Trustee Simon, I think, observed that we're talking about an umbrella here, and we're talking about championing social justice, which I champion. I want to vote for this. I want to be able to support this motion. It's frankly, for me, strange that I, among many others who have fought for social justice, would end up voting against this. I want to be able to vote for this. This is really, how would I say, this is a dramatic change. So let's call it for what it is. It's for the umbrella of social justice. That's what my proposal is for. It's the same framework.
Okay. Trustee Morales, and we had a second. Oh, let's see, more discussion with Trustee Thurman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hadn't considered this, but I think that Trustee Morales has offered a very reasonable compromise. As I sit here thinking about it, and as I listen to the arguments that Trustee Morales has made, by calling it social justice, it gives an opportunity to say that this is a measure that would be very broad in its scope, that it would address what many consider to be ethnic studies, and it would go beyond to broader conversations of social justice that warrant all kinds of consideration and conversation. I think it's a very reasonable compromise. I think it does, as Trustee Morales says, it puts it in a place where everyone can vote for this, and that no one who would normally support something like this would have to vote against it. I'm grateful, Trustee Morales, for the compromise. I think it really creates a broad category of conversation that can address the needs of many. There are very few things that are so broad that we can sort of all find room in it, and I really appreciate that. And I hope that the trustees will support this alternative naming proposal. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Trustee Simon?
I would agree, and not to repeat the comments that I said before, but again, social justice is an umbrella. Ethnic studies, as it relates to the founding of ethnic studies, the ethnic studies scholars have framed their work as a very defined disciplinary area in which, under a larger theme of sort of social justice practice, lexicon, studies, students would be able to choose ethnic studies courses within that umbrella. But to frame ethnic studies as a part of sort of the title of this requirement, when you don't have support from the ethnic studies community within CSU, is disingenuous in some sense to all the work that has been put in to creating this 3-unit requirement that, folks on the board have said they wanted to expand to all oppressed groups. Great. I'm in there with that. But to say that that's what the ethnic studies requirement is not what the practitioners of ethnic studies have created. It's a defined, focused group of study. So I am in support of a social justice requirement with the course offerings supported in the materials that the leadership of this university have provided us for review. Again, just with the alternating of the name requirement.
Thank you, Latifa. I'm wondering if Dr. Blanchard would like to address this issue and the possible renaming, removing the ethnic studies component from the amendment?
Yes, I will, and I'll offer 2 comments, and if the chancellor would like to add any additional, he certainly can tag on. First is, we did not ask the CSU community in all of the work that we have done thus far. We have not asked the CSU community to give consideration to a social justice requirement as a general education requirement. All along, we have been very clear that this has been an ethnic studies requirement, and that ethnic studies is at the core of it, with social justice as the anchor for it, the ethnic studies, and then making sure that we are clear about the role that we can create through our social justice arm as well of this. And so the most salient point to make about this is that it would be disingenuous to call this a social justice requirement at this point, given the fact that the CSU community, all 23 campuses, and all that we've asked them to do over the number of years has not just focused on social justice. It has been ethnic studies tied to social justice. Lastly, I'll say that if this passes, it would require yet another 3 hours of general education. And so if the Weber bill passes, and then we have our we have our social justice requirement that is being proposed right now, that would make 6 hours of the 48 hours that somebody has to lose 3 of those hours, will be 6 of those hours, in order to make room for both an ethnic studies requirement and a social justice requirement. And frankly, I just don't think that that's what the CSU community has in their minds at this point, nor did we have in mind as we have been working with all of our campuses, our faculty, our administration, in helping to really understand and underscore the importance of ethnic studies as the anchor, as the 4 disciplines tied directly with other oppressed groups, and the synergy and the intersectionality that it has with social justice as well. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor. Trustee Simon, did you want to add something?
I was just listening to the Vice Chancellor.
All right. Trustee Abrego.
Yes, I want to speak on behalf of the motion. I like the idea of the social justice requirement umbrella. It doesn't exclude ethnic studies from participating in offering courses in this area. It doesn't exclude any of the other departments either, but it's a general umbrella that is inclusive. And I think that's exactly what the proposal is describing. So I'm in favor of a social justice requirement only.
Trustee Kames?
Yeah, I just had a quick question for Dr. Blanchard. So you mentioned something about, hypothetically speaking, if this passes and then the bill ends up passing as well, can you please explain how that would work again in terms of units or general education requirement?
So right now, we're asking for an amendment to Title V, which means then that we have 48 units right now at the lower general education level. We would have to, as we stated on yesterday, we would have to then look at the general education curriculum, because remember, the way that the bill is written as well as our proposal is written, that we have to stay within our 120 hours. The chancellor mentioned this on yesterday as well, that this isn't the time to start loading the wagon so that we would add more course requirements for students above the 120 hours, which obviously would go completely against all the work that we've been doing over the years to ensure that students can meet timely degree completion. So what this means then is that if we already have the proposal in front of us, as well as the Weber bill, both of them require where 3 hours of general education would be required. That's when we had the discussion on yesterday about looking at all the different areas, area A through E, and that we would be creating another area in order to place those 3 hours. But it doesn't mean that we're adding 3 hours. It means we are replacing 3 hours. So that would mean then in this instance, the proposal that's on the table is where we would take 3 hours from the social sciences. They already have 9 hours, and that those 3 hours would then be used to create an area F and have its own separate ethnic studies and social justice area. However, if we are stating here today, as is being proposed on the table, that we have a social justice requirement which I would imagine would be 3 hours. And if the Weber bill passes and the governor signs it, that would be an additional 3 hours. We're talking 6 hours that we would now have to take a critical look at the base of 48 hours to determine how we're going to replace those. That's the statement that I made, and that's what I'm referencing in terms of this would be dramatically different than anything that we have discussed with our faculty, with our administration, with our students to date.
Thank you, Dr. Blanchard. But at the end of the day, I'd have to agree with Trustee Morales said in terms of voting on something that is called an ethnic studies and social justice requirement, but when it doesn't necessarily reflect an umbrella of an ethnic studies courses, I'm not sure how comfortable I feel about calling it that as well.
Trustee Carney?
Thank you. I was just going to bring to the trustees' attention that the only thing we're voting on is a one-sentence addition to Title V, which says a minimum of 3 semester units or 4 quarter units at the lower division in study designed to understand ethnic studies and social justice. We are not talking about what we're calling something. If we drop ethnic studies out of that sentence, we have deleted the very core of the staff proposal. So this is not about naming. This is about the substance. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Taylor?
My comment was exactly what Trustee Carney just said. Let's keep ethnic studies in to ensure that it gets the kind of attention it deserves.
Trustee Eisen?
I just wanted to echo part of what Dr. Blanchard said. After 2 years on the General Education Task Force, I learned that our general education requirements as they currently exist are some of the largest requirements of any university in America. They make up very close to 50% of the units you need to graduate, 120 units. Most institutions' GE requirements take up about 25%. So any addition to and when you think about this from the student perspective, I am a freshman. I want to get from here to my major and then to my degree. But first, I have to clear all of my general education requirements. I have to take written composition, oral composition, 3 units of arts and literature, 3 units, et cetera, et cetera. And they add up. Plus, once they are at their major, we alone among institutions require 9 units of upper division GE coursework, alone among institutions. So we have already said to our students, you can get to your degree, but you better check those boxes accurately and make sure that you don't make a mistake, because you can't graduate in 4 years if you make a mistake. So these kinds of decisions around 3 units may not seem like a big deal, but to get our students to be able to clear these hurdles and get to their major and get to graduation, every 3 unit class matters. And if what we're proposing is we have 3 units of social justice, and then hopefully there will be another 3 units of ethnic studies separate and apart from social justice, we are putting a burden on our students that I think we should all think about. None of us really have spent a lot of time trying to figure out what all these GE requirements are. But believe me, for freshmen entering, trying to figure them all out, it is something. It is complex. So this is not, a little thing. This is a big thing.
Thank you. Trustee Morales.
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to do with the motion, and the motion is to add clarity to bring clarity to what the requirement is. So once you come in as a freshman, you know what the requirement is. It's about the freedom to take courses in the umbrella of social justice. That's what it is. It's adding transparency to the requirement and clarity. This motion does not in any way change the framework of what is being proposed by the Chancellor's office. It doesn't change at all. And then also suggesting that somehow we're adding, more burdens to the students. Well, if you assuming in the worst case scenario, or some would say the worst case scenario of having 2 courses. Well, if somebody does take ethnic studies as an undergraduate, that fulfills it. Those that want to take, don't want to fulfill their requirement, because you take one ethnic studies, that takes care of the social justice requirement and the ethnic studies requirement. So those that want to take social justice, don't want to take ethnic studies, well, yeah, they're going to have to take another course. So it does not necessarily mean that you're adding an additional 3 units. So for that, but we don't have to even go there. I think that what it does, and the purpose of this motion, is to add clarity to the framework and the purpose, which is not valuing one way of curriculum or another, or philosophy or framework, academic framework, or rather is a broad an umbrella of what it is. It's social justice requirement. That's what we're talking about. And that's the spirit and the letter of my proposal. Thank you.
Trustee Thurman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was trying to do the math in my head. Trustee Morales got to it much faster than I could. Trustee Morales just laid out an example of how the CSU proposal renamed can be in harmony with any requirement that the bill in the legislature would make around ethnic studies in a way where students would not have to duplicate the requirement. Meaning, and I would invite the Chancellor or Vice Chancellor Blanchard or others to speak on it, so it's not just me saying it, but it seems to me that in making a motion that simply renames the requirement without changing the framework or the language, it means that if a student took ethnic studies under the proposed now social justice framework, they would have still met the ethnic studies requirement that the bill, that Dr. Weber's bill intends to make. And so either way, you meet the requirement and you don't have to say there's 2 different 3-unit courses that have to be taken. It seems to me that this renaming without changing the framework actually creates a way for there to be harmony between these 2 proposals. Again, another reason to support the renaming in this way. But Madam Chair, if you think that, or if Chancellor White wants to elaborate on that, but it seems to me that the math is clear.
Trustee White, did you want to address that?
I may need Executive Vice Chancellor Blanchard to help answer the question, Trustee Thurman. We have tried to what's in front of you here is a Title V change for a new general education requirement in ethnic studies and social justice. It's not like, and students then would have the choice within that requirement to deal with the 4 historical groups or other oppressed groups. And as you've seen in the materials, there's a range of courses where that could happen throughout the university. If we just change this to say the CSU is establishing a new general education requirement in social justice, and then if there were to be a legislative action or a CSU action to add an additional general education requirement in ethnic studies, it's inescapable that we are then having to find place for 6 credits rather than 3. and 3 is hard enough. There are cost factors here. There are to the state of California, as well as to the students. And there is this integrity issue as well that Executive Vice Chancellor Dr. Blanchard has spoken to, is that the university consultation through shared governance with senates and faculty, students, stakeholders writ large, was around this expansion, as was said yesterday by Dr. Miner, sort of ethnic studies plus, which is where the world is, not where it was 50 years ago. The world has changed, and academic disciplines mature and grow as the times change. So both mathematically as well as from a point of view of engagement with our faculty and other stakeholders, I speak against the name change.
Thank you.
And I do so with enormous respect for Ugo. Enormous respect. And one final comment, I was listening to Trustee Khan's, and if when this comes up for a vote, if people don't want to vote against it, but don't want to vote for it, then the choice that an individual trustee has is to abstain.
All right. Trustee Fagan.
A couple things. It seems like what we're talking about is almost narrowed down to definitions and what's acceptable definition of what we're looking at. First of all, about the idea that we would end up with 6 units required instead of 3, I have every confidence that our Chief Counsel, Andy Jones, would be able to find a way to make it clear that the trustees' intent on the renaming would in no way require 6 units, but that if the legislature and the governor had signed into law a requirement on ethnic studies, that say that would take precedence over this, or that this would work in concert with the new law. But I have no doubt there's a way for us to indicate and make sure that the 6-unit idea would not be in effect, and that we would only be doing the 3 units. I think a lot of us had a little concern, or a lot of concern, when we were specifically told that in this ethnic studies requirement, you could actually comply with that without taking any ethnic study course. And that again was a little jarring, but I think that maybe what Trustee Abrego and Morales and the others are talking about, and simply trying to have a definition that reflects where this all is. So my question is there another definition in this Title V change, such as making it including ethnic studies, or changing it to or instead of and, or some direction there that would make it clearer to those concerns about this. I'm no expert in definitions of ethnic studies, but from all the discussion from the people who are, it certainly appears that ethnic studies refers to four groups specifically, and social justice expands that. So isn't there a definition that would reflect the concerns that this is not just ethnic studies?
Trustee McGrory.
I think it's time for us to vote this up and get to vote this up or down and get to the main motion. But I don't think we should forget our discussion from yesterday, which I think Trustee Thurman missed, and that is, this has been a 6-year process. And one of the foundational principles of a great university system is shared governance. And this has gone through an elaborate, complicated process. I'm always frustrated by how long it takes to get through the shared governance system, but it's gone there, gone through it. They produced this result. I just think it's a big mistake and a bad precedent for the state legislature and the state government to be dictating to the university system what should be requirements in the curriculum. That should be done by the faculty and the administration through shared governance.
So are you calling the question?
Yeah, call the question.
Okay, so Trustee McGrory has called the question to vote on the renaming or the motion?
The naming.
The renaming, which I just wanted to, I'm hearing from somebody that it's actually not, ethnic studies is not in the title. It's in the body of the amendment. So.
Point of privilege, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for honoring that. I know that there are others who still wanted to speak in the discussion. I noticed that Trustee Day and others had their hand up. You know, Trustee McCrory just invoked my name specifically. While I regret I couldn't be in yesterday's conversation, Trustee McCrory, I want you to understand, and others, that for me, this has nothing to do with whether or not the Academic Senate makes the decision. This has nothing to do with any view about whether or not the legislature should oppose anything on this academic body that I have so much deep respect for. I want to be clear. My comments, everyone is entitled to vote however they choose to, and I respect that. That's what democracy is based about. But I want to be clear. My comments are only because I'm trying to hold with fidelity to what ethnic studies is and has been, and what those who framed it and have been fighting for it for 52 years have asked for. I will respect the outcome of this vote in this body, but I would not appreciate any implication that I'm suggesting in any way that the legislature or any other governmental entity dictate to the CSU what it should do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I understand.
Thank you. So we are then, Secretary Jones, we had Trustee McGrory call the question. So we are and can vote now on this motion to remove ethnic studies, although from the title, although you've let me know that it's not in the title. Is that correct?
So to clarify, there is no title that says ethnic studies. The words ethnic studies and social justice appear in the sentence, the single sentence that is being proposed to be added to the Title V provision. And so as I understand Trustee Morales's motion to amend, it is to remove the words ethnic studies from that sentence.
That is correct. And also, I would then want to be clear in my motion that should it have a title, the requirement, the title of that requirement should be social justice. That is the spirit of the motion, and I would like the second to agree to that.
Okay, so we are then, so the item we will be voting upon now is...
Chair Kimbell?
Yes?
The original item is one sentence. Allow me to read it. And then let me allow to read what I'm hearing in Trustee Morales's motion. The way it is in front of you at this moment is a minimum of 3 semester units or 4 quarter units at the lower division in the study designed to understand ethnic studies and social justice. And Trustee Morales's motion is to change that to be a minimum of 3 semester units or 4 quarter units at the lower division in study designed to understand social justice.
Trustee Morales, is that?
Yes, that is. And also for the record, the intent is that this requirement be referred to as the social justice requirement. That is, in fact, what my motion is about.
Okay. So So we will now vote on this motion by Trustee Morales on. All right, and so
The secretary, trustee secretary can now call the roll on the proposed amendment to remove ethnic studies from the Title V proposed language. That's it.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Jones. I'll begin with Trustee Abrego.
Sorry.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Trustees, please unmute yourselves for the roll call vote on the proposed amendment. Trustee Abrego.
Yes.
Trustee Adamson.
No.
Trustee Carney.
No.
Trustee Day.
No.
Trustee Eisen.
No.
Trustee Fagan.
Yes.
Trustee Farrar.
No.
Trustee Furstenberg.
No.
Trustee Fong.
No.
Trustee Kames.
Yes.
Chair Kimball.
no.
Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis. Trustee McGrory. Trustee Morales.
Yes.
Governor Newsom, Speaker Rundon, Trustee Sebelius.
I cannot vote to eliminate ethnic studies from our proposed Title V change.
Okay, thank you. That's a no. Trustee Simon?
Yes.
Trustee Steinhauser?
No.
Trustee Taylor?
No.
Superintendent Thurmond?
Aye.
Chancellor White?
No.
Okay, Chair Kimball, the noes have it. The motion does not pass.
All right, so yeah, I see a question from Trustee Taylor.
Madam Chair, I move the original motion as proposed by the committee in yesterday's vote be brought to a vote.
Second.
All right, so we are now going to vote on the original amendment to Title V regarding ethnic studies and social justice. And we have first a motion and a second. Ms. Kiss, can you take the roll?
Yes.
Yes. Trustee Abrego?
No.
Trustee Adamson?
Yes.
Trustee Carney?
Yes.
Trustee Day?
Yes.
Trustee Eisen?
Yes.
Trustee Fagan?
Yes.
Trustee Farrar?
Yes.
Trustee Furstenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Fong?
Yes.
Trustee Kames?
No.
Chair Kimball?
Yes.
Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis? Trustee McGrory?
Yes.
Trustee Morales?
No.
Governor Newsom, Speaker Rundon, Trustee Sebelius?
Given the strong division by the faculty on that matter, please respect my abstention.
So noted. Trustee Simon?
Tifa, you're muted.
Oh, I apologize. No. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Steinhauser?
Yes.
Trustee Taylor?
Aye.
Superintendent Thurmond?
No.
Chancellor White?
Yes.
Chair Kimball, that motion does pass.
Thank you, everyone, for that robust discussion. The action item number 3 from the Committee on Ed Policy is approved. The board will now adjourn into, well, actually, the board will now have lunch for half an hour, and then afterwards we'll adjourn into closed session to discuss executive personnel matters. The board will reconvene for their next regularly scheduled meeting on September 22nd and 23rd, 2020. Notice of the meeting will go out in the ordinary due course 10 days in advance of the meeting. Thank you.
This is the California State University Office of the Chancellor's live stream. Please adjust your audio accordingly. This is the California State University Office of the Chancellor's live stream. Please adjust your audio accordingly. This is the